Welcome to the Move Local podcast. Our mission is to connect the movers and shakers of the Dundas and Hamilton area who pride themselves on growing a healthier and more connected community. We will do this through having conversations around health, education, entrepreneurship, and much more. We want to be part of helping you move confident, move free, and move local. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Move Local podcast, brought to you by The Movement. My name is Dalton, and I'm coming at you guys with another episode this week. We're staying in like the food and hospitality space. The last couple episodes, we had Liz on from Delusional Hot Sauce. She was awesome, super stoked about her. Today we have Tej on from Merit Brewing, super stoked to dive into all things Merit, the story behind it, what you guys do here. So Tej, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, man. Like, super happy to be here, happy to chat with you. This is great. I love that you're celebrating people that are putting their passion into what they do every day, and yeah, happy to share.
Yeah, I appreciate that. What's the day look like for you so far today?
Oh, it's been wild. Monday is always, the big kickoff, kind of recovery from the weekend. We actually celebrated our 7th anniversary this past weekend, so it was a busy one. It was also art crawl, first art crawl of the year where they closed down the street, and that's always wild in itself. We're rolling off of a weekend where we sold a lot of beer, had a lot of people here, celebrating, whether they were celebrating our anniversary or just, celebrating a small moment like a Friday night. We had a lot of people come through, and that always feels really good. Now it's a new week. It's we got new goals, new milestones to kind of look at what's ahead for the summer, and we reset. Yeah. Revamping,
getting ready to go.
That's right.
I think it's cool that we're doing this interview at this time, like the 7-year anniversary. I think that's super cool because there's probably a lot of reflecting that goes on during like the lead up to something like that. And I'm always curious to dive into like the story kind of behind like Merit and how it got started and all that stuff. So I would really love to hear like from your perspective, like where it started from in getting into the hospitality space. Is that something that you've always been like part of, something your family was part of, or is this kind of a different area?
Yeah, cool. So my professional background's not in hospitality. It's actually in the music industry, but as an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 16. Ran a business while I was in school here at McMaster, all in music. Had the opportunity to work in Toronto and then New York City before I decided that the music industry was had a great run, but it wasn't what I wanted to spend my life doing. Big part of that realization was my own kind of personal growth as an entrepreneur, kind of understanding what I wanted to accomplish, specifically kind of reflecting on my family's history. So my grandparents were entrepreneurs. They came to Canada. They had the opportunity to come to Canada from our village in India pretty early on in their lives. And they spent their life opening and building furniture stores. Not necessarily because they were passionate about furniture. They were great at selling, first of all, but the reason they built their business and the real purpose behind their business was so they could facilitate that same move for over 1,000 people from our village in India to Canada. So every new store they opened up became an opportunity to bring folks here so that they could have that same opportunity. My grandparents housed them, clothed them, fed them, employed them. My dad grew up with that rotating bedroom of brothers and sisters that were part of a community that they built through their business, and that was really different than my interaction in the music industry. As much fun as it was, as successful as it was, I really wanted to bring my passion for entrepreneurship to a space that we could use to facilitate community. And I think it's a really overused word sometimes, and and it's a very broad word sometimes. But sometimes that's okay. If it's broad, that means you can create community in different ways. Now, are we going to be able to facilitate the immigration of 1,000 people from India to Canada through this business? No. That was a remarkable thing that my grandparents did, but there's lots of ways that we center community and community building, community engagement here at the brewery that kind of become the background to our day-to-day and kind of drive a lot of that purpose.
Yeah, that's super cool because purpose is the word that kept coming to my mind. It seems like your grandparents entrepreneurship or the furniture business was just a platform for them to have a purpose of bringing more people to the country and giving more people opportunity, right? And I would imagine there's a lot of probably purpose behind what you guys do here at Merit, even though maybe people don't know all of the details behind it. There's probably some stuff you keep internally, but I've always, having experienced Merit before, I can sense that purpose. Like I don't really know what it is, and it would be cool to kind of hear a little bit more of like what that is for your team, but you can sense that when you come in the door.
Cool.
And so it's cool that that's something that's like obviously rooted in why you're doing entrepreneurship and what you're doing in general.
Yeah, definitely. And again, that was a realization that kind of took me a while, and then became a really important realization. And we, like you said, we center that in small ways and in big ways. Especially when we were planning the business, we really wanted to understand, how every decision we were making before opening could have a purpose, or have a story, or have something that was more than, well, this looked good, or that sounded good, or that felt good. I don't know if we spent too much time, diving into purpose, but we spent a lot of time, diving into purpose.
Yeah, I think it's really cool because a lot of times like people will start things and maybe not think about like the details of all that stuff, and when you are starting a company and you're thinking these purposes, I'm curious to hear how like you've translated the purpose behind what you're doing and what you want to get out to the team, and having them live that same kind of vibe.
Yeah, for sure. Like so much of the way that we set up the physical space here actually ends up facilitating that for us.
Totally.
And the people that we, have here on our team end up becoming the ones that facilitate that as well, right? So if you think about community, community to me, oftentimes the simplest form of community is conversation. And the way that we can facilitate conversation here is through these large tables that you have to share. You're going to inevitably be sitting next to someone that you didn't know, before you sat down at that table. And you know what? Hopefully you strike up a conversation. Sometimes that conversation can start with, hey, what are you drinking? Or, oh, that sausage looks great. What is it? Because you got a couple things in common. You're in Hamilton. You obviously like beer or food.
Right.
So it should be easy enough to, have that little, conduit to, oh, you have this interest? Oh, like me too. Or, oh, I'm actually new to the city. Where should I go for this? We see these small conversations, starting, and by the end of, a conversation, to see someone reach across the table and say, hey, it was really nice to meet you. Like, I'll hopefully see you around here again. Like, to see that over and over again, to us, that's the smallest way that we can create community, is just by, having the pieces in place to facilitate conversation.
Yeah, it's cool. And that's like obviously something intentionally set up, which I always talk about this with people is, a lot of people will remember great experiences that, whether you go to this restaurant or, this service or whatever it is, and you almost think that it's just on accident, but a lot of times like the really good experiences that you get at places are very much intentional and thought through a lot, and so I'm always interested to hear that backstory from people, because I know like from my perspective being a business owner, that's something we thought about a ton, is like, what is it going to be like when this person comes to the door for the first time? Who's going to be the person to greet them? What's the flow of our space look like? How is this set up so that people interact with it in a fun way that makes them motivated? Like that kind of stuff I think is so important, and often thought deeply about by people that create good experiences.
Yeah, totally. And like the other things in our space that kind of do that, it's 8 large tables that are all the same. There's no sections, right? It's not like, oh, I'd rather sit in a booth or a high top or at a 2-top table. Everybody's kind of on the same, level playing field, no matter where you're, sitting in the space. But then we also have the bar service, right? Like to order, you come up to the counter at Merit and you get to interact with our staff. There's no, the over formality of, I'm your server, I'm here to take care of you tonight. There becomes this a little bit less of a formal barrier to conversation with our people, where if you need anything at any time, you don't have to try to make eye contact with a server or flag them down. It's I'll get up and I'll move 10 feet to have that interaction. If you want to have that interaction take time, if you want to dive deep into questions about the beer or the sausage, or just want to an ear to talk to, our team's great at that. Or if you want to be I'll have my beer and I'm on a date, so I need to quiet, intimate time, I'll head right back, and you don't have that interruption, and we've got the opportunity to
kind of take your own adventure almost.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's super cool. And I would love to hear about, like, obviously those things are intentional. How did you bring that into like the beers that you guys make? Like I haven't dove too much into like all the story behind the beer, because I know you write a little bit about it on your website. I was reading it, but like, is that something you guys take a lot of time to think about too when you're coming out with like a product. Like for example, I know you guys just did like what was it called, like Cloud 9 that you did with like the 7th anniversary, the 9 breweries kind of in Hamilton coming together, all contributing. Like I think in the essence of what you're talking about, that's exactly what
for sure
you try to bring. But how does that process go for you and your team when you're trying to come up with that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, so like obviously as a brewery, the beer list is central to, you know, what we need to be thinking about on a daily basis, and we're thinking about that next month, 3 months ahead, 6 months in advance, so that we can plan, right? This is, manufacturing. This is production at the end of the day. But the way that we, format our list and what we're making really comes down to providing like accessibility for as many people as possible too. We don't want beer to be one thing and to have someone have an experience with like a beer and have that paint their entire picture of what beer, or specifically craft beer or local beer, is. We've got 10 taps, with our beer. We generally have a range from stuff that's extremely classic and comfortable and familiar to people that are maybe new to craft beer. They'll find themselves at home with a lager, for example. And we've got 3 lagers on tap right now, different styles that we can talk through. Or if you want to get weird and you want your beer to taste like Swedish berries, like we have a beer that tastes like that too. And for a lot of people, that's like, oh, I didn't know beer could taste like this. And that's a really neat thing, because we don't want you to have a barrier to enjoying something that, hey, maybe you're out with a bunch of friends and they say, let's go to Merit. I'm like, I don't know, I don't really like beer. But like, we can hopefully find something that is maybe at first uncomfortable for you to dive into. You're like, I don't know about this, but then once you try it, it becomes that I've never had an experience like this before. That's using cool fruits. That's using, we have a beer with Earl Grey tea. It is an amazing introduction to folks that are like, well, I love Earl Grey tea. That sounds great.
Like I can get behind that.
We've in the wintertime we come up with stouts that are there's one that's like s'more inspired, right? Like, well, I love s'mores. I'll dive into that. We do a whole series of beers that are influenced by wine. So using grape juice and wine skins to actually bring wine flavor profiles into beer. So that if you're more of a wine person, you're like, well, cool. Like, we want to try one of the beers that we actually made with wine in mind, and maybe you'll be a beer and wine person through that. So we really work at building the list so that everyone can come to the table to enjoy it, and everyone feels like they're going to get the thing that they actually want out of the experience instead of having to settle.
Yeah, it's super cool, and it's funny you say that, because when I first moved to Hamilton in 2020, my business partner, he's from this area, and I was going back to London at the time to visit some old friends of mine, and I'm not a big beer guy in the sense of I know all the details about it, but I enjoy consuming it. So, but I asked him, I want to bring something from Hamilton for them to try, because I just moved here, I think it'd be cool. And he told me to come to Merit and get the wine hybrid kind of beer that you had.
Sweet. And
so I grabbed a bottle of that and I brought it, and that it's interesting to hear you say that, because the reason I did that was oh, this is unique. I'm if I bring this to these people, be like, hey, this is a new place that I'm from and they make this unique beer, I'd love for you guys to try it. So it was cool for me to introduce part of my new experience from Hamilton to them.
Cool.
And it's exactly like that. It's just very unique and approachable from a wide variety of people.
Awesome.
And I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, that's the goal. And we know people, we're right in the heart of downtown Hamilton, right? It's not a destination where you have to, seek out coming here because you love craft beer. You might just be walking down the street and I'm kind of hungry, I'm kind of thirsty. This place looks kind of cool. We have literally had people walk in and not realize that we're a brewery.
Yeah. So
to make sure that we can still, welcome those people in and have them feel comfortable and have them feel at home, that's huge.
Yeah. Before we go there, I'd be curious to hear right now, what is one of your favorite beers you guys have on tap?
Cool. I've been I'll play it maybe typical of folks that work in the beer industry. I'm really excited that we're able to make lagers. For a long time, making a lager was almost seen as an anti-craft beer thing. The people that made lagers were these big breweries, your Molsons, your Labatt's. That's, if you want a lager, go to them. Before it was, we're a craft brewery. We make stuff that's wild and punchy and all over the place and gonna knock your palate off. Now to be able to focus on making lagers is really exciting. And for that to be something that like both craft consumers and people that, again, maybe completely new to craft beer or local beer, to have a roster of lagers is really great, again, because it kind of opens that invitation a little bit. But it's the most popular beer style in the world for a reason, right? Everyone loves lagers.
It's a great way to introduce them to like maybe the lineup of beers that you do have.
Yeah, exactly.
Get a little curious, and they come in here, people are talking, they see this drink.
Exactly. It provides a really good gateway. And for me, it's just like we make incredible lagers. Spinny and John, our brewers, do. They're the hardest beers to make as well, which is something people don't realize because they're so simple. A lot of times you think simple beer, simple process. No, it's the most technically difficult beers to make. So the fact that we can execute them really well, and have them present in this way that, again, is accessible but like incredibly high quality, something we're really proud of. And again, from a drinking experience standpoint, it's so easy to go to and so easy to enjoy for myself, but also like to have that as an option for everyone to enjoy is really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. The other thing before we talk about the sausages, because I'm very interested in talking about the sausages, is like it's pretty crazy. And I mean, again, I'm kind of closed off to the beer space at a broad scale, but like I used to live in London. I grew up in in the Windsor area, and then like moving to Hamilton. The craft beer scene here is pretty insane when you think about it. Like, with the level of breweries that are around, with like Fairweather, Collective Art, Grain and Grit, Shed, like just so many. I know I'm missing some, but like just so many that people are coming to Hamilton to experience.
For sure.
And
it's seen to be really proud of, and we really are. And that's kind of why we, with the 7th anniversary, releasing Cloud 9, bringing all 9 breweries that exist in Hamilton together to make a beer, felt really special because it felt like a celebration of our community, our beer industry community. When Merit opened up, we were brewery number 3. So Collective Arts had opened 2015, I believe. Shed had opened, I think, 2016, and we were 2017. Shortly after, Grain and Grit and Fairweather opened up. When Fairweather and Grain and Grit opened up, that meant 5. We saw this like shift in both folks within the city and from out of the city, and really start to interact with the scene. It became, there's a thing happening in Hamilton. And we were all really new, so there's this like freshness, this like energy
excitement
around the scene.
It's cool.
I've never had this beer, and most of it, outside of Collective Arts, like you had to come to Hamilton to drink Merit, Fairweather, Grain and Grit, and I think Shed at the time too. So you had to come here to experience it, which is awesome for us to be able to pull people into the city to, sure, have a beer at our place, but then hopefully explore the rest of the city at the same time. It's really cool. And we've kind of continued that momentum, as well. There's now 9. The neat thing is that geographically, we kind of cover a lot of the city, which is cool. We've all kind of got our little pockets, and that makes for the ability to kind of have your local brewery no matter where you live in the city. If they're all in one end, it'd be kind of a bummer for the folks in the west if they're all in the east or whatever. So every pocket has their local brewery, which is cool. But then it also like creates this opportunity for you, if you want to go to the breweries in the west end, but you live in the east, you're now exploring a part of the city that you might not have actually moved to, because it's comfortable to stay in your little pocket, right? That's like, it's really cool. It's something we're super proud of. Honestly, I can say this so genuinely, like the quality of beer being made here, I put our 9 breweries against any 9 breweries in other cities. Because it'd be a lot more difficult if there was like, they're fine. There's no like they're fine here. Everyone's making really good beer. We've all got our own takes on it. We've got our own approaches, whether they're really classic styles like the Brewer's Blackbird or Shed.
Now that I forgot about that, but like they're great too.
Or you're making wild and weird and experimental stuff, right? Like every one of them is focusing on quality, and they're making great beer. So that's a cool thing to celebrate in our city.
And I think Hamilton is embracing it, I would imagine, because like again, I think of like now that I'm new here over the last like 4 years, and I go home or I go to other places, I want to bring people the beer. Like if I know anyone who's like a beer fan, I'm like, okay, you got to try this, we got to try this, and trying to bring that to other people. And I think like people probably latching onto that for sure.
Definitely, and even we sell beer across the province now to like different bars and restaurants, and it's cool to sometimes see this amazing restaurant in Ottawa, like what's on their beer list. It might be Merit, Fairweather, and Collective Arts on their list. And they're like, cool. There's a big Hamilton representation on this list. And people in another city like Ottawa or Toronto kind of recognize that, and you see Hamilton on these lists, and that's that's its own kind of unbiased, way of, patting the scene on the back.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, the sausages. So like, my business partner Will, we got to give him a shout out because he's the one that told me to come here for the beer. He also loves the sausages,
Cool.
and he's like, you got to go to Merritt. You got to get sausages. So now, like, when my parents came to visit me for the first time, I brought them here
Cool.
to try the sausages and stuff. But I'd love to hear like what got you into that game. Like, was that something that was always like on the radar when you're opening a place and you really wanted to take it to the next level? Because you guys aren't just doing like sausage, you're doing sausage to a high level.
Yeah.
And it's really good.
For sure. So Merritt started with 3 of us. Myself, Aaron Spinney, who's our brewmaster here, and then Jesse Valens. Jesse's a chef in Toronto. It started with Aaron and I having a conversation around, we both went to school here, both about coming back to Hamilton, opening a brewery that we thought, could represent the culmination of our like experiences with beer and around beer. We kind of quickly realized that like we really wanted food to be a part of that. Our best experiences with beer were with food. Our best experiences with food were with beer. And we know that, outside of that like paired experience, having, the food just as its own, magnet and draw was going to be really important too. Again, if you think about, how do you invite more people in, you don't have to love beer or even be a craft beer fan, but like, you got to eat.
Totally.
You love exploring local restaurants. Maybe that's the thing that pulls someone in here, and they happen to be drinking, a beer that's also made here, right? So yeah, shortly after Spinney and I connected on the idea, and committing to like this is what we're gonna start working on. We kind of put our feelers out to talk to a couple chefs that we knew. We ended up connecting with Jesse through another chef friend of ours. And at the time, Jesse was competing in something called the Sausage League. The Sausage League was it ran for 5 years in Toronto, and it was like this NCAA bracket-style competition of very fancy chefs.
I love it.
In a blind tasting, like over a dinner service, competing sausage versus sausage. And, we met Jesse. He said, hey, I'm actually doing this thing right now. You should come out and check it out. So we went. And we were just blown away. We didn't know sausage could be what it was until we tried Jesse's. I think the thing that it was like a Reuben sausage, but like the entire Reuben sandwich was inside of the sausage. So the sauerkraut, the cheese, like everything. And like one bite in, we were like, this is it.
Game over.
This is it. Beer and sausage have been friends forever, right? Everyone knows, bratwurst and a lager from Germany. But how do we take people's perceptions of this very simple thing and this very familiar thing and flip it on its head? How do we, again, invite you in, but then exceed your expectations on something?
Yeah.
So sausage became our, canvas for our food program where, we don't want to just eat bratwurst every day. Love a good bratwurst, but we, our flavors and our palates like want to explore the world. So let's take those flavors from around the world and use sausage as that canvas. The first sausage that we created was the butter chicken sausage, because we knew we were going to have an IPA in the menu. We knew we were working on a beer at the time called Shannon, named after my grandfather, that is inspired by my, I made it as the perfect curry beer. And so the butter chicken sausage became that, okay, let's make a beer or sausage for this beer, actually. And from there, it's just, you got an endless, list of ideas that you can roll off of. We've done Peking duck sausage, we've done jerk sausage, we've traveled the world, figuratively, to kind of present these flavors and present these experiences that if you just said, oh, we're going to go get beer and sausage, you'd kind of walk away from that experience, be like, I wasn't expecting that. And then past that, you got to have good French fries. We work really hard.
That was
going
to be my next thing, man. I'm like, the French fry game is even on another level.
Yeah, exactly. And so every
and sorry to interrupt you, but like the French fry thing is like, I think for me, it's like when I go to a place and there's like bomb fries, but there's a healthy amount of fries.
Right.
I'm done. I'm game. Like you got me. I feel like when you go to a place and like it's just like they didn't really try too much with the fries, and it's just there's maybe not that many. It's like you're just like it just rubs me the wrong way.
Right.
So like I think there's something about the fries for me anyway that just like really draws me in.
Well, a lot goes into them. They take 3 days to make, and so that's like that's the again, the purpose of those fries is to take this very simple thing and, you know, be like, oh, that's a great fry.
Yeah.
And we know that people come back for that, right? You know, and then it goes great with beer. There's so many things that work with that. And again, it's that kind of like attention to detail and attention to like the purposeful. It's a pretty small menu, and we only do a couple things, but we want each of them to be great. We want everyone that comes in and experiences those things to kind of see that consistency of really high quality, whether it's the beer, whether it's the food, whether it's the experience. We didn't want to stretch ourselves too thin to kind of water down any one aspect.
Yeah, that can easily happen sometimes. You know, you see that with a lot of like businesses in many different spaces. It's like sometimes if you try to do too much or service too much, you water down the quality. Whereas like, okay, we're gonna narrow in on this, add our own flair to it, elevate it, do it the best we can. And you know, some people probably won't come because they have no interest in either of those things.
Sure.
But the people that do come are like on board.
Yeah, and the people that don't come are probably don't understand that we kind of have a pretty wide breadth of like flavor and experience that you can have. But again, beer and sausage can seem very restricting. It can seem very singular.
So it's like, how do we hook people in to try one? It's like one thing, and then they explore the beer, and they're like, oh yeah, like I thought beer was this one thing for my whole life, and now I'm experiencing a wine hybrid. Yeah, it's like, oh wow, this is great.
For sure. And you might have that with the vegetarian sausage. We've actually turned a cauliflower bhaji, like a traditional Indian fried snack, into a whole sausage by getting like this 3D printed custom mold made so that we can make it look like a sausage, so that a vegetarian can come in here into a beer and sausage place and still have fulfilling, fun, interesting, you can't get anywhere else kind of experience as well. Yeah,
that's super cool. What do you think? How do you think people describe Merit? Like when they're telling people about it, like do you think they're saying like it's a brewery or it's where how do you think it's described?
That's a great question.
I'd be curious.
That's something. What I hope is that people paint the entire operation, with this singular, sentence, whether it is, it's a great, like honestly it can be as simple as it's a great place, because place means that like, it's not just about the physical, space, but it can be what is there is great. And I think like that's what we want to shine through, again, no matter what you're coming in for, whether it is singularly beer, singularly food, a big place to hang out with a big group of friends, all those things together, a fun place on James Street while you're hopping around exploring. We want all of it to be great. So yeah, I hope people kind of speak a little bit generally about it, because, it's great is what we want to accomplish, right? We, strive towards that. Again, not in a singular way, but just as a totality. I hope people feel like warm and welcome, and I hope people feel like comfortable here. I hope people feel like they walked away with their expectations being like exceeded. I didn't think it could be like that is always something that we like love hearing. Or, I don't usually like X, but now I can try this. Like that's so fulfilling and like means so much to us to hear that. I hope that people come in feeling relaxed and leave feeling excited.
That's cool. Because like even me, when I think about how I would tell people about it, it's like I always tell immediately the first thing I talk about is just the vibe of the place. Like
cool.
And even though like the beer is good and the sausages are great, is like the vibe and the feel of the place is honestly why I want to bring people when they do come to visit me like here, because like I'm like, you got to just experience this,
Yeah.
And so I think like when you say like it's a place people want to go to, like I feel like that's probably a good way to describe it, because I would imagine that's what draws a lot of people in. And then obviously having the elevated experience with the food and the beer, like the product always has to be good, but like that feeling of coming for the vibe, I think is like, that's what people are looking for, For sure. And we exist in these funny gray areas in a few of the industries that we participate in. We aren't a typical restaurant, right? You feel a little bit different at Merit, as opposed to going to any other restaurant where there's maybe a little bit more of that formal service. On Sundays we have a lot of families on any day we have a lot of families that come, but Sundays especially, you'll see kids running down the hallway, and that's fun. That's fine. Like I don't know if you can just let your kids like run loose at any other restaurant. Or again, that like the idea that we're a brewery, it's not just like a manufacturing facility with like a couple stools set up so that you can hopefully buy a beer while the brewers work. So I hope that people's enjoyment on the beer side of things is also an experience that they haven't had at your typical brewery either. Yeah. Yeah, and I've talked about this many times, talking about merit, even on this podcast. Is like I took my girlfriend on my first date here, and like the reasoning for that was a lot of the things you touched on. It's like it's an open environment. So my thought was like, this is, and we met on a dating app. So my thought was like, okay, I want to take her to a place where it's like feels safe because it's open. There's a lot of people around, you know, like that kind of vibe where it's not like too much pressure. But I like the idea that there was like no one coming to the table. So it's like it's up to us to like go and get stuff, and like we could have a conversation if conversation was good. There was an out if like it wasn't going well. It's very easy for like people to depart in like a very open environment, whatever, you know. And then just the vibe of the place, I was like, I think this would be like a feel good place where you're feeling comfortable and safe like while you're there. And so I think like anybody who's looking for a first date spot, merit.
We see it all the time. It's awesome. I was saying it before, like we see so much of that. Then we see every experience. You know, we see friends, you know, visiting friends from out of town, and they bring them to Merit. We see, you know, families visiting their kids in McMaster, and their kids and the parents are sitting at the table, you know, having a meal, catching up. We see, you know, Friday night, Saturday night, you know, bar crawl, you know, crowds coming in. There really is, hopefully, you know, a way for anyone to experience Merit, kind of no matter what you're doing, whether it's, you know, the ultra high intensity fun stuff, or just, you know, kick back, relax as well.
Totally. As a business owner, I think I would miss out on the opportunity to ask you this question. Like, you guys just celebrated like your 7 years, which is like crazy. Congratulations on that, because like, you know, we've been in business probably 3.5 years, and I'm like, it feels like we've been in business for 25 years. But I would love to hear maybe a little bit about like some of the lessons or things that you've learned, and then maybe like some of the more proud moments that you have of like Merit and what you guys have created.
Cool. Yeah, there's been no shortage of learning over 7 years, especially that middle, you know, few where you know, the impact on COVID on our industry, the hospitality industry, and the beer industry specifically, you know, really changed everything. And I think if there's one lesson that I've learned, there's a million, but if there's one that I can kind of speak to, that is really the center of, you know, a lot of our thinking now on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. It's you know, you really need to have a great plan, and you really got to be willing to throw that plan out the window.
It's so true.
And plan again. You know, that's a little bit of our story. You know, when we opened, we had this idea that Merit would make beer here, serve it here. You had to come here. It was this very like closed loop system. You know, we spent so much time on every detail of the space, on every detail of the experience, on every detail of the menu. That's what we really wanted, and we thought that was a bit unique as well. You know, generally breweries, you know, they want to get really big so they can be really efficient, and then send it as many places as possible. We kind of had this like antithesis, you know, to that we wanted to focus on, and that was a beautiful thing for 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. You can't, you know, have people inside of your own tap room and serve them beer. Unfortunately, that meant our business plan was not going to work. So we had to, everyone's favorite word, pivot, and figure out a way to change our business to change with the environment. And whether that was, you know, created by a pandemic or not, that's like an important thing that you kind of should always be ready to do as an entrepreneur. So we hit the road. You know, we got in our car, we made phone calls to folks in the hospitality industry that we knew had reached out over the years, you know, that, hey, we want to carry your beer. And for a long time I was like, oh, sorry, like we only sell it in-house. So thankfully, we built up this reputation, and we built up a bit of a kind of reserve Rolodex on like how we can actually get some beer out there. That list started pretty small. And now we're in a couple hundred, you know, restaurants across the province.
Wow.
Just based out of the necessity of having to create that over a period of time. And that's not something that you want to like start, create, and then turn off.
Sure.
So that's not part of our business, right? Like we've had to integrate that into the plan that we've had from the beginning, and the business looks differently. That's a different amount and different types of resources that go into running that kind of business versus one that is very closed loop like we'd planned. So we threw that business plan out the window. We, you know, went back to square one in terms of, you know, writing it again, and we're kind of constantly evaluating it. What else? You know, what else are we missing? What opportunities out there? How do we, you know, plan for a future that is unpredictable? Because, you know, we kind of have to. And so, we're kind of now, you know, baking that into a lot of our conversation and my planning, you know, for the future as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's such a great lesson. I love that idea. I'd love to hear, like, is there something that stands out to you, like, oh, I'm like, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of moments, but like, I'm really proud of like this moment or this type of scenario that happened with our team. Was it like maybe adapting in COVID? Is there something else that really stands out?
I mean, I think that's a really easy one to point to is like how much we changed and the people that stepped up, the different hats that people had to wear all of a sudden. Like, really, it was wild. It was moving at a breakneck speed where we had to make decisions, and just sometimes it was just trying something because I have this idea, we need to try it, and if it works, great. If it works, let's figure out how to keep that going, how to make it successful, how to hopefully make it something that we can continue to doing and become part of our business. Or hey, this might just be something we need to do for 2 months, 3 months, however long this period is.
Right.
That was pretty remarkable and pretty, looking back, kind of can't believe, how much that we had to do and how many people stepped up. And I'm like eternally grateful for everyone that, was a part of that experience, because it was not fun,
I mean, and to make it
wild.
to make it through that.
Yeah.
That, like, I mean, a lot of people unfortunately didn't, and like lost a lot of opportunity that they had, and so I would imagine that's also something that's like you're really grateful for, and your team, obviously a testament to your team, but a testament to the community that you built.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there's dozens of restaurants and breweries that didn't make it through that. So the fact that we did is incredibly proud of, and something definitely to be I don't know about celebrate, because I got to admit I'm pretty terrible at that. Being able to celebrate the wins is tough. So we've been trying to answer this question is a difficult one.
Yeah.
Appreciate the prompt on that one answer, but you know what? Like, I'm incredibly proud of our consistency. And I think I kind of look at that over like singular moments. I'm proud that we've always like strived to have great beer, have great food, and have a great experience for people to enjoy. I'm proud that we have the shared goal of like getting better, and that because someone said our French fries are great, we're not like, cool, work's done. We just changed the potato we use for our French fry this week.
Yeah.
Because we were like, oh, it can get better, right? And that's a big change. It's not. It sounds like a small change, but that's like a reasonably big deal.
Yeah.
Because we want it to be even better.
Yeah.
And same thing on the beer side. How do we make this better? What processes? What people? What ideas? How can we make better beer? How can we make beer that people want and get excited about? I think those things are kind of baked into specifically the people that are making everything here. Like they want that, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to dive into some rapid fire questions.
Cool.
So,
sure.
What would be like one of your favorite local coffee shops?
Ooh, so I just had One for All coffee for the first time.
One for All. Did someone just tell me
on
about
King
One for
Street?
All? I feel like someone just told me about this.
Yeah.
Every time I ask this question, there's a new coffee shop, but I think someone mentioned that. I've never had.
Yeah.
I've never
One
had
for
it.
All on King Street. I literally just had it for the first time 2 days ago. One of my favorite coffee experiences that I've ever had, from a surprise and delight of what this coffee is and how it made me feel. It was incredible. On a regular go-to basis, the Cannon is my favorite. There's so many great coffee shops, but we used to live in that neighborhood, so we used to go there all the time, and now it's kind of like a return to our neighborhood. The people there are amazing. What they built when they first opened and what they've kind of continued to grow is really special, and it's always just remarkably consistent too. But there's no shortage of good coffee in the street. That's a tough one.
That's another one where I'm like, man, there's so much good coffee here.
Yeah.
Again, with this next question is one of your favorite local restaurants, or maybe even what is one of your favorite places that you just recently frequented? Because I know sometimes it's hard to pick.
Yeah, for sure. On the street, I love Martello, especially we're sitting on our patio. I think about Martello's patio, and that's where I wish I could spend every summer evening. It's such a great vibe back there. Food's great, beer's great, wine's great. The staff is always amazing. It's a good go-to for sure. And then really pumped that Le Tambour's on the street too.
This street.
Also no shortage of great spots, right? We're pretty spoiled. Le Tambour, coming and opening up a few months ago. It's been an amazing entrance for the street. They're killing it from a quality perspective. It's an exciting one to have here for sure.
Yeah. What would be your favorite way to stay active?
Cool. Yeah. So I love running. I started a running club in 2017, same time we were opening the brewery, to kind of encourage people to explore running in downtown Hamilton, which was that was a novel thing back then. There weren't like run crews, and now there's
Yeah.
like half a dozen of them, which is amazing.
I know the running scene here too is like,
yeah.
I know we're hitting on saying it's on another level, but like it's true. Like there's like the running scene here, the coffee scene,
Yeah.
the beer scene.
Yeah, no, it
Something
really
to
good.
it.
And it's the running scene's another one that's like built around community and people gathering to enjoy something
Yeah.
that they love. So that's always been amazing. And then basketball. You know, I grew up in Chicago watching Michael Jordan and the Bulls. It's always been my biggest passion. And being able to get out and play basketball a little bit more recently is I felt reignited with getting the
cool.
ball in a hoop right now. Yeah,
That's exciting.
yeah.
The last question I like to ask everyone is like, what does the word like move local mean to you when you hear it?
To me, it's two things. I think it's a physical, movement. It's exploration, right? It means, get out of your comfort zone sometimes. You might love going to that coffee shop that's on your corner, but hey, what if you went 2 more blocks and tried a new one, or you explored one that you just heard opened up. It's about exploration. It's about moving in different areas, moving in different ways than you're used to. I think that's amazing because it introduces you to new experiences, and it could introduce you to new people. It could introduce you to your new favorites. So I think movement in a city is great because it's for me it's very fulfilling, but it's also enlightening. It's also this experience that it's free to move, right? If you can get out and explore another area, that's an experience that you can have that I think is really powerful. The other thing, move local. I really see that as almost how do you move? How do you grow local? How do you it almost goes back to supporting local, but how do you move this city from this place that you see it right now to where you want it to be, and and everyone can play a small part in contributing to that move. If you see something missing, start it. Talk to somebody about it. If you have an idea, try to bring it to life. How can you contribute to making this city the place that you want it to see for yourself, that you want it to see for your neighborhood, for your community. The things that can make this city a better place to live, better place to work, better place to play. All those things. I think every individual has the opportunity to contribute to that and move what it means to be local.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I think like Hamilton has this feeling of like taking pride in that. You can sense it, like the local businesses that I've talked to, and like I'm always trying to connect with new people because like I just think that all the small business here really take pride in that, and they want to move it forward, and I think they realize like how much more potential Hamilton has, and like we always talk about with like in our industry in physio, it's like what was done in the past was great to get us to a point, and like how do we continue to add on all the great things that have already happened to like make it better. It's like the same idea. It's like how do we continue to build off of what's already here to like make this city a better city, and like you can sense it from the small business community, like they really want to do that.
Yeah, for sure. A lot goes into starting a small business and operating a small business, right? You're not doing that, or part of the reason you're doing that is because you believe that what you're doing is going to kind of better the community. So to me, that's moving what it means to be local, for sure.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
For those of those people that don't know where you are and how to follow you on Instagram and all that stuff, why don't you let them know where they can find you in person, where they can find you online? For
sure, yeah. Merritt's at 107 James Street North, right in downtown Hamilton, at James and Wilson. Brewery, restaurant. We got a retail shop if you just want to pick up some beers to take away. On Instagram, at Merritt Brewing. I'm at Merritt_Tage as well for myself. Yeah, come on down. If you see me at the brewery, please say hey. I love meeting people that learned about us through whatever channel, but I would love to meet some folks that learn about us through you.
Sweet, awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I've been waiting to have this conversation with you, so it was great, and I hope you guys check out Merritt if you haven't already.
Please do. Thanks, man. I appreciate the time.
Yeah.
Cheers.